Hey everybody, it is Mike Schumann and Seth Tao here for the Daily Hoosier following a 56-6 Indiana dominant win over UCLA. It sounds like in the background, one of the teams is leaving the stadium with a police escort. Um, but Indiana, Seth, you said it before we went on there, how dominant it was. These wins are becoming routine in some respect, which is probably one of the more interesting aspects of it. We've seen a lot of games like this over the last year and a half, but this was a UCLA team that was surging a little bit, had some national attention, some respect with their new head coach, but Indiana just put their foot on their throat pretty much from the jump and left no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You said it. UCLA entered this game with the hype. I mean, not that Indiana wasn't getting praise and hype as the number 2 team in the country, but UCLA felt like the story coming into this game. They had rattled off 3 straight wins after changing coaching staff, and they had momentum. They had the stunning upset over Penn State and then backed it up. And this was going to be a challenge on another level for them, but I don't know that a lot of people really thought UCLA was going to come in here and win this game, but I think there was kind of an expectation or maybe a belief that UCLA could keep it competitive for a little bit, and that was just never the case. I mean, honestly, I feel like the final stats don't really do justice to just how much of a death grip Indiana had on this game. I mean, and honestly, part of why Indiana stats aren't greater is because numbers wise is that UCLA had 8 penalties for 83 yards. There was a stretch where it felt like they were committing defensive pass interference on every play. And I mean, so that prevented Indiana stats from looking even better. But yeah, I mean, pick 6 on the second play of the game and just methodically driving down the field. I mean, even it's easy to forget, after everything that happened. I mean, Fernando had that interception on that tip ball and it was only 7-0 at that point. And you thought, maybe this is where UCLA kind of starts to climb back into the game. No. It just was a totally one-sided affair. People started asking at halftime already at halftime, how long are they going to keep the starters in the game? So It was just one of those days.
Yeah, and you mentioned Aiden Fisher's pick 6. He's a storyline in this game for multiple reasons. Got absolutely set the tone. He looked like he knew exactly where that ball was going. Like he stepped right in front of that. I'll do my Steelers plug here. It reminded me of James Harrison stepping in front of a pass in the Super Bowl. Very similar type of play there. But he, a drive or two later in the first quarter, he goes down with an injury, and it's not real clear what the nature of the injury is other than it's related to his knee, because he could be seen with a knee brace on that he didn't have on during the game when he was on the field. But Kurt Signetti, both at halftime and post game, seemed a little bit casual about it, said it was more precautionary. Fisher was moving around, jumping around, running around on the sideline, so didn't seem to be bothered by it. No noticeable limp or anything. But we talked about this during our midweek pregame show. He is a guy that if they lose him, it matters. Like that's the green dot. That's the emotional leader. That's everything on Indiana's defense. But I will also say that Isaiah Jones has just blown me away this year. Like there's probably nobody on the team that I've been more impressed with, who I had no expectations for coming into the season.
Yeah. I mean, Elijah Hardy too has played really well. Yeah. I was going to say that it's a big deal if they lost Aiden Fisher for any amount of time, but it's probably less of a big deal than you may have thought it would be coming into the season. If they lost Aiden Fisher for any amount of time, just because of how well that tandem has played.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm on record when we did our position previews in August saying like linebacker was a real area of concern for me. I felt like losing Jalen Walker, and they didn't really address linebacker in the transfer portal. I was concerned about it. I'm not going to lie, but Elijah Hardy, as you say, has been up to the task. Isaiah Jones stepped in. I think he forced a fumble, maybe on the first or second drive that he came in for Fisher. And the defense really never missed a beat. They gave up a total of 9 yards on UCLA's first 4 drives, and then the forced fumble was on the 5th drive. So they were completely dominant, and by that point it was 28-0 and the game was over. will they miss a beat with Fisher if he's out and they play a better team like a Penn State down the road? I think they could. It certainly remains to be seen. Like if you're a team that's contending for a national championship, you want to have Aiden Fisher out there. So I think that's a storyline to keep an eye on, but we'll just have to wait and see because as of right now, it's precautionary. Kurt Signetti did say there would be X-rays and MRIs and all that fun stuff if it's deemed necessary. So we'll see. The on the offensive side of the ball, very very balanced was how I would describe it, which has kind of been the story of the whole season. Mendoza with 3 touchdown passes, a 4th touchdown on the ground. Hemby and Black combined for over 150 yards. So it's been the story all season, Seth. Like they can beat you whatever you give them, they're going to take and they're going to beat you.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And, in post-game press, I asked Fernando Mendoza about, Mike Shanahan as a play caller and kind of what he does to set up the offense for success. And Mendoza kind of talked about that, just the way they kind of can craft game plans for specific opponents. They knew that, against Michigan State last week, that their better path to success was going to be throwing heavy. And they knew that they were going to be running the ball a lot more today. And I think the running game is definitely the story offensively today, because the last 3 games for Indiana, even though obviously there's not many disappointments about, the way they played the last 3 weeks by any means, they finished under 150 rushing yards as a team in each of the last 3 weeks. And they burst back up to 262 today. And, it felt like they were able to get more of those chunk gains. They had they broke off a few big ones, but there were far fewer times where they were getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage, or they were, 1 yard gain, just kind of chipping away. Like it felt like the running game was having a lot of success and really able to wear down that UCLA defense. And they just never really took their foot off the gas. They were brutalizing that UCLA defense. I don't know if you remember it's somewhat of an insignificant play in the game, I felt like, but because the game was already a blowout, but I think it was in like the 3rd quarter, and Kaylon Black had a run where he just pile drived a UCLA defender on like 10 yards, like after contact before he finally went down. And it's like, what is an opposing team going to be able to do if somebody's doing that to you?
Yeah. You definitely don't want to have Kaylon Black coming at you downhill with a head of steam. That's trouble. EJ Williams was the leading receiver for Indiana, 5 catches, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has matched his career highs for a season for receptions, new career highs for a season for both receiving yards and touchdowns. This is kind of a good story because people remember he transferred out mid-season last year to protect his red shirt and ended up coming back. Something that's, I'll admit, surprised me a little bit. I didn't think Kurt Signetti would take him back, but it shows how much he values his talent, and he's showing it this year. He's having the best year of his career in his final year of college eligibility. And he really, forces people to respect Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper. You have those 2 weapons. EJ Williams as a 3rd option is really dangerous.
Yeah, he finished today 5 catches, 109 yards, his first ever 100-yard receiving game in college with 2 touchdowns. And Indiana only threw for 213 yards total. So EJ Williams had over half of Indiana's receiving yards on the day. And you're right. I actually wrote in my pregame story yesterday about, key matchups coming into the game. I highlight Elijah Surratt in there so often just because he's, Elijah Surratt is that game breaker that, going to step up in a clutch moment and just always make, they call him Waffle House because he's, open 24/7. And, obviously it's a corny nickname, but he's that dude that is just always going to find ways to get to the ball. Well, today, Elijah Surratt had 2 catches for 6 yards. One of those was a touchdown catch. He still, right, found a way to make a play. But Elijah Surratt had 2 catches for 6 yards with a touchdown. Omar Cooper had 2 catches for 2 yards. So those 2, which are, the center points of Indiana's passing game on the receiving end, did very little for Indiana today, and they didn't miss a beat. And, you're right. EJ Williams is a good story. And I don't know that he necessarily has you can see Elijah Surratt playing on Sundays. You can see Omar Cooper getting into the NFL and making an impact. I don't know that you necessarily have that type of upside with EJ Williams, but for a college player, I mean, he's got size, he's got speed, he can go up and get the ball. He can make plays. I mean, he's a guy that's for a number 3 option on a team. I mean, he's a real threat, and this is what Indiana has been. The type of playmaking Indiana's waited for from him for so long. I mean, EJ Williams came in during the last year of the Tom Allen era, an unheralded. Or was it 2022 he came in? It was one of the last few years of Tom Allen's time in Bloomington, right. And the kind of underachieving former top recruit at Clemson, and just trying to see if he could get it going, and with some new scenery. And it's taken him a while, but he's a real factor in this Indiana offense.
Yeah, and to the point of UCLA limiting Surratt and Cooper, we should point out there were 3 pass interference penalties on UCLA.
Right.
2 were on downfield throws to Surratt. 1 would have been a touchdown to Cooper. So, if you look at their numbers in light of that, they would have been better, but it just highlights, UCLA was very intent on taking those guys away, but go ahead and do that. And look what it opens up in the running game. Look what it opens up with EJ Williams. So, it's a little bit of pick your poison with Indiana right now. And they were also the discrepancy that jumped off the page, and I put it in my 3 quick reasons story after the game, was the difference in third downs between these 2 teams. UCLA was 1 of 11 on third down. Indiana was 12 of 16 on third and 2 of 2 on fourth. So they were, they weren't getting as many chunk plays in this game. They did get the big play to Williams, but it was methodical. It was surgical. They just kept getting into like 3rd and 3, it seemed like, and they were converting time and time again, and just kind of breaking UCLA's will ultimately.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest difference for me in watching the game, and it's not even really statistic. I mean, all the game stats will point to it, but just Indiana won this game and pulled away in this game just by total dominance in the trenches. The offensive line and the defensive line. Indiana's defensive line in the first half was so ridiculously dominant. This defensive line has been really good all year. I think that first quarter may have been the best quarter of football this defensive line has played all year. I mean, UCLA had, I think, 9 yards of offense in the first quarter alone. Negative, they had negative rushing yards coming out of the first quarter. It took them, until they were able to finally get a little bit of momentum at some point in the second quarter, where they were, for them to finally, get their yardage up to double digits. And
right.
I mean, just the defensive line was getting home play after play after play. They weren't always getting the sack, but they finished with 3 sacks and 7 TFLs. They had 6 of those tackles for loss just in the first half. It was such a dominant performance. And yeah, you can say, oh, they let up in the second half, but I mean, they stopped really sending blitzes in the second half. They were sitting back a little more, and obviously mentally, you're going to keep your foot on the gas. It's not an effort thing, but you play the game a little differently when you're up by 50 points. So, right. Yeah. So, and the offensive line, I thought was, for as much credit as, we just threw at Kalon Black, and Roman Hemby had a really good day too. I mean, I thought the run blocking today was outstanding. And Indiana's one of the best run blocking teams in the country in Pro Football Focus grades. And I mean, Fernando Mendoza took a couple hits here and there, but I thought the pass blocking was pretty sound today too. I mean, UCLA didn't get a single sack. I think I got to double check. They only finished with only one QB hurry too. So, I mean, I thought the offensive line as a whole was really, really good once again. And I mean, that's where college football games are won and lost, in the trenches. And Indiana's looking really, really strong in the middle.
Yeah, they are. I felt like early in the game, UCLA's blitz, they were both run blitzing and pass blitzing, and it seemed like it had them out of step a little bit. But I think Indiana clearly figured out what was going on there. And on the defensive side, you mentioned how well the D-line played, and let's not forget that's with them kind of adjusting for the first week without having Kellen Wyatt as part of that unit. Mm-hmm. I did see Daniel Ndukwe out there a little bit. I don't know how much he played. I'll have to get the snap counts off PFF and watch the game a second time just to see all the adjustments that were made. But in any event, they didn't seem to miss a beat, at least against UCLA without Wyatt. So I thought that was a positive for them as well.
Yeah, and Ndukwe, I know was out there when Mikhail Kamara was banged up for a little bit as well, so
Yeah.
that may have been part of that as well.
Yeah. Special teams didn't really stand out too much, but it was funny. Kurt Signetti mentioned multiple times last week how UCLA had gained possessions by using fake punts and said that, they were clearly going to be on the lookout for that. UCLA had a pretty clever designed fake punt, but it didn't go very well for them.
Yeah, I actually really like the play design that they went with, and the problem for them was Indiana knew it was coming, and it was a look that Isaiah Jones after the game said they had seen during the week, they were prepared for. And I mean, you could tell just by the way Indiana played it that they were very prepared for. I mean, like I said, I thought it was a clever play design where you have kind of the reverse, but with the pass element linked in there. And if a defense doesn't know it's coming, they can kind of be overly reactive, overly aggressive in kind of pursuing, various legs of that reverse and not even think about the pass that's coming. But Indiana knew where they needed to be, knew who they needed to mark. I think you said there was a guy open down the field, but I mean, the guy who was throwing the pass for UCLA was out of rhythm because he had to dodge multiple defenders that were trying to hit him in the backfield. And by the time he was able to wobble a throw out of his hands, I mean, it was nowhere even close. And Indiana was just very well prepared. I mean, and special teams moment stuck out, but all three facets of the game, all three phases, Indiana was a really well prepared team today. And that's something you hear a lot of the national pundits say about this Indiana team is, one of the biggest things that sticks out is the coaching staff and how well prepared, how well coached this team is. And I mean, that's at this point, you got to acknowledge that's a decently big advantage to have when you're going out on game day.
Yeah, well prepared, and I would just say kind of fundamental and disciplined. I was listening to the pregame radio show. I think it was Buck Sir that said, Indiana doesn't try to punch out fumbles. They try to actually just make the tackle, and just little things like that I hadn't thought about, but that they probably focus on and work on. It can be the difference between winning and losing, and the difference between being dominant like they were today. Again, 56-6. I was way off. I said 38-17. I've been embarrassed by Kurt Signetti many times with my predictions. Up next week is another chance to be embarrassed when Indiana goes out to Maryland. They, this
one
is
way to put it.
This is a Maryland team that just beat UCLA, so you got to think.
No, UCLA lost them.
Oh yeah,
UCLA beat them. UCLA beat them.
That's what I meant to say. My delivery was off. I embarrassed myself again. The point being, I think Indiana's probably going to be a 20+ point favorite on the road for that game. In the neighborhood of 20, I would guess.
There was a preliminary. I saw there was a preliminary line for that game on some sports books already, and before the game today kicked off, and I saw Indiana was minus 17.5 for that game to start off, and I would figure that line is probably going to get higher after what Indiana just did today. But
yeah,
we'll
would think so. We'll see.
Maryland is going to be on bye this week, so they have some extra time to both rest up and extra time to study up and game plan for that one.
You have to wonder how valuable it is for Maryland to sit there and watch that game. It's like, oh, that's who we have to play next. Okay. But that is who they play next. It's 3:30 p.m. on CBS. Indiana back in the national slot there. Seth, you'll be out at College Park for that one. We will get back to you. Indiana basketball plays tomorrow at Gamebridge, 1:00. We'll have coverage of that game. We'll get back to you midweek with a recap of that game as well as a preview of Maryland. But I think we can leave it there for now for this post-game recap of number 2 Indiana's 56-6 dominant win over UCLA. He is Seth Tao. I am Mike Schumann for the Daily Hoosier. We will catch you guys all next time.